Hello and welcome to Firaxis Games. My name is Dorian Newcomb and I was the lead animator for Civilization 4, and sitting next to me is Soren Johnson, who is the game designer for Civilization 4. And we're really excited that you're a big enough fan to have this DVD in your hands, and we're really excited to share with you a presentation we gave to the Game Developers Conference in 2006. The Game Developers Conference is a group of professionals in the game industry that share secrets and share how they do things. And Soren and I were really excited about how we got to the final game in Civilization 4, and we wanted to create a presentation that we could share with our peers.
This presentation basically grew out of the fact that every couple of months while we were developing Civilization 4, I would save a version of the game. So when we got to the end of the project, we kind of looked at that and thought, this might make for an interesting presentation. We could basically show people where we were at each stage of the game, how good it looked or how bad it looked, how much fun it was to play, what features were implemented, what features weren't implemented, where we were putting our efforts. And it was very well received, so now we're really happy to be able to share it with our fans. So without further ado, let's begin the presentation. So the title of our presentation was Play Early, Play Often, Prototyping Civilization 4. It's a talk about how we started with a focus on being able to play the game immediately, and also talking about what it's like to prototype a game when you have a very small team. At Firaxis, we focus on something that we call a playable prototype, which is a very simple version of the game, but where all the gameplay features are basically in place. And the reason why we do this is that we're able to get to the fun faster. We don't slow ourselves down worrying whether all the units look right, or whether the facial animations are in place for diplomacy, or whether like combat actually looks like combat. We just don't care. We just implement all the game rules and see how the game plays. Now, the big advantage here is that we're able to develop gameplay at a very low cost. Eventually, you're going to have 10, 15, 20, 25 artists layered onto a project, and that's going to really drive up the cost tremendously. And so you can't make risky gameplay decisions at that point. You can't significantly change your direction. It's a bit like steering a battleship at that point. But if you're able to develop a playable prototype right off the bat with a small team, you can make some very you can try some very interesting things without risking anything, without risking wasting time or wasting money. You can also, if you focus on getting basically the game done in the first half of the project, you can spend more time polishing in the second half, more time balancing units and tweaking the rules and making sure that the interface works correctly. The downside, though, is you have to bug fix right away. You can't let bugs just sort of sit there and fester, because the game has to be playable every day, every week, because we're constantly playing it. So there's bug fixing becomes part of the schedule, even though you're 2 years away from shipping the game. Now, when you do this, as I've mentioned, you're going to have a very small team. With Civ 4, for the first year, we basically had 4 or 5 programmers, a couple artists, and a producer. So you basically have a team of 7 people or so. There is an advantage to having such a small team. You have a very flat decision-making process. Any system in the game is probably only involving maybe 2 or 3 people. So at any moment, you can just grab them all, make a quick decision, and move forward. There's very good communication. Everyone's sort of lined up along the hallway. So the things that are happening, everyone's within earshot. Everyone's sort of aware of what's going on within the project. Also, with a small team, when you only have 2 artists for the first year and a half, the publisher knows that they shouldn't be expecting sort of pretty results, so to speak. They know that there's a limit to how good we can make the game look at that point. And often it's a little odd in development, because we'll ask the artists to create all these assets in a very compressed period of time, and we have to remind them, don't worry about making it look good. This stuff is going to get thrown away. Right now, the purpose of this art is to serve the needs of the prototype, to make people be able to understand what's going on, and that's it. We also usually have a designer programmer involved in these teams, and that also really cuts out a lot of potential waste, because you no longer need that loop where the designer comes up with something, calls a meeting, or it has to write it up, calls a meeting, talks to the programmers about it. They go off and work on it, and then it comes back, and it's not exactly what the designer thought, or maybe the programmers tweaked it in a certain way, and you just have this sort of you have this sort of loop that takes a lot of time, where it can take a week or so to iterate on each specific feature. If you have one designer programmer kind of working on the product, that person can test out ideas in one night, and they may come up with an idea, implement it, see how it works, and they might even just throw it away, and no one else on the team even knows that that idea was tried. It allows for a very fast, very effective process.
It also allows for the artist to make stuff really quick, because they have one person to please. You don't have to worry about what a team of people think and go through the approval process. If it works for the game, it works for the game, and then you can make it beautiful later.
All right, now we'd like to step through a history of Civilization 4, where we go through around 7 versions of the game from every 3 or 4 months over the course of the project. In each slide that you see, we're going to be listing the new features from each version. New gameplay features are going to be listed in black, new graphics features in green, and new interface features in blue. The first version that we'd like to show, which we term version A, is from September 2003. So this is a very early version. We had only been working on the game for maybe 2 or 3 months at this point. So we were just putting the very basics in. And it's important to note here that Civilization 4, to my knowledge, is the first Civ game since Civ 1 that was started from scratch. So at this point, I was literally implementing, the very basics. Making it turn-based, making it tile-based. Just basic movement from tile to tile, which works in a turn-based nature. We had random maps at this point. We implemented the tech tree. All the sort of just basics that people expect in a Civ game. And I should also mention that this version of the game was actually multiplayer only. You could play it single player, but the AI just didn't do anything. So that shows